Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Apparently, an allergy-free space is the same as a safe space. I used to work at a dining hall at a very big university. I did this for 2 years and most of the time it was very chill and good. But occasionally you'd meet the crazy or very immature students. We had a special room that was vacuum sealed, known as a worry-free room. It is especially made for students and associates that have food allergies. This room has signs saying that this is for people with allergies all over the door and windows. Now, to access this room, you need a special key card to let you in. You have to pay for this. But every other month, we would have students begging to be let in. Not because they had allergies, they would demand to be let in because this was a safe space. I can recall the managers telling people to leave, and even security got called twice to have them be escorted away. But the worst that happened is this one student who had dyed blue hair. She was demanding to be let into the worry-free zone, which we won't allow because we need this to be only for people with allergies. She's told to leave and she huffs off and leaves. Or so we thought. That was until 2 hours later we heard screaming. The managers rushed out and found a student on the ground before the worry-free zone, going into amphiphylic shock. We acted fast thankfully and they were taken to the hospital and treated and were okay. Security contacted campus police and an investigation was conducted. 5 days later, service workers, that's what I was, were told to always wipe the doorknob of the worry-free room as we passed by it. Turns out the dyed-haired woman was seen on camera wiping peanut butter on the doorknob because she wanted to prove that this place wasn't for people with allergies, that it was a safe space. And she ended up getting handcuffed and arrested. A college student wanted to prove that we were wrong by almost killing another student with a severe peanut allergy. That still makes me wonder if going to college is worth it, with people like that being able to attend it. Next story. Karen takes her kids to the archery range. This happened last night. I frequent an outdoor archery range at a large state park. The range doesn't have an on-duty safety officer as there is only 5 lanes, which is fine as 99% of the people that shoot are extremely professional and polite. That is actually my first negative experience in about 2 years. So I have the range to myself. And as I'm knocking and drawing an arrow, some random kid comes out of nowhere and runs into the range right in front of me. I retract the bow and turn around and see a mom and another kid casually walking up to the tables behind the lane. One of her sons has one of those kids' compound bows, and the other has one that appears to be a wooden toy recurve. Both are between the ages of 7 and 12. And the exchange went like this. "Hey ma'am, I'm going to need you to control your kids if you're out here. They can't be running onto the range when someone's shooting." "Oh, it's fine. It's just you out here. Just don't shoot if they are out there. They won't be shooting next to you anyway." "No, if I'm shooting, they can wait for me to finish my set before they go out there. That's how this works." "Don't tell me how to mother my kids. This is their free day, and they beg to come out here." At this point, I just said screw it in my head and decided to be patient. I was the only other one there. Had already been shooting for an hour and just wasn't in the mood to get into it with someone. So I continue and keep glancing over to the older son, whose little noodle arms cannot handle the extreme 20 pounds draw of his bow. This kid is flagging everything as he struggles to draw a compound bow with his fingers. I figured that attempt to help him out. "Hey man, I have an extra release in my bag. It'll definitely help you draw that easier." "What did I just say? Don't tell my kids what to do." "Hey, he's obviously struggling. I don't want to get shot either, and he's come pretty close to that too.
If you attempt to talk to my sons again, I'm calling the park police.
I should have just left. But I love archery too much and it was a beautiful day. So the kid gives up. I stop paying attention to them and continue my business. About 5 minutes later, I'm about to set my bow down when something flies past my freaking face, maybe 5 feet away. I turn around and see this lady's kids running around behind the range shooting the bows at each other. Ma'am, not only did your kids almost just shoot me, but if a ranger drives by and sees that, you're going to face a pretty hefty fine.
They are just toys, it's fine.
No, it's not fine. The cops aren't going to see them with toys. They are going to see 2 kids shooting at each other with bows. You're lucky I'm patient.
I'm done with you. I am calling the police. Have fun rotting in jail when I tell them you threatened us.
Excuse me? You know what? Fine. I'll wait here. Long story short, the park officer that showed up was actually a regular at the archery range. He recognized me, thankfully took a statement from both of us, and ultimately banned the woman from the range. She also didn't have a permit to be there in the first place, so she got fined as well. Next story. Bread and egg, once the job is done, prepare for your just desserts. A few years after I started my business, I was asked to clean up and optimize a number of PCs in multiple locations, as well as set up some forms and templates for a new client who owned a local restaurant. The work, all labor apart from a little travel, was performed over the space of a month due to scheduling conflicts, and also school holidays, but on completing the last of it, the client confirmed verbally that he was happy with all I'd done and to go ahead and send an invoice. I duly emailed an invoice for a sum just in excess of £400. I waited for payment, never heard anything. Sent reminder emails, called and left messages, but no response. Eventually, a couple of busy months had passed and I met the client by chance in a local supermarket. On asking why he'd not paid or been in touch, he said that all the PCs were as bad as they had been before I'd started, and that he had tried to contact me with no success, as my landline and mobile phone had color display as well as answering services, and there had been no emails. I knew the latter was nonsense. And as any PC user knows, a system can easily go back to pot if the user's bad habits do not change. So I contacted a local debt collector, gave him the details, printouts of my call logs and post-invoicing emails, and he took them to the restaurateur. On his return, his words were, he's not disputing the invoice, he's saying that the work wasn't done right, so it's his word against yours. So I queried if it was worth taking the guy to small claims. Even if you could prove he confirmed he was satisfied with the work, they might insist you get his computers back to their pre-invoice state again. Do you really want to spend more time doing that? And of course the answer was no. So I stewed it over in my mind and came up with a plan. At this point it was late November. So creating 2 throwaway email accounts and female names, I got in touch with the restaurant to book a large party for Valentine's night the following February. I put it down as my husband's surprise 40th birthday party. Confirmed that. My husband's sister and CC'd her in the message with the other throwaway couldn't make the journey north but would happily pay the £10 head deposit as her share towards the night. Of course, as time went on, the ideas grew arms and legs. The numbers attending increased until the owner suggested he'd reserve the whole restaurant for the evening, and they would happily arrange the seating to suit us. But could I ensure the deposit was sorted as soon as possible, please? Of course, I confirmed that the sister was a scatterbrain, and that I'd ensure that check was with him very soon. He emailed the sister using the CC address, and she confirmed it had been posted. To keep him on side, I asked for a proposed menu in advance so that I could send it to all the attendees for pre-ordering. Naturally, they were delighted that they would know this as it makes their life much easier. Consequently, the numbers for all 3 courses were emailed in, with a few fussy eater variables thrown in for good measure. Needless to say, by the beginning of February, he was getting quite antsy about there being no sign of the deposit, but I reassured him that the sister's check must have been lost in the post, so she'd send another by special delivery. If they could ensure someone was there to sign for it, I knew the owner lived about 25 miles away, and the restaurant didn't open till 5 p.m., so he'd have to come in very early and hang around waiting for it. A week before the day, and he'd obviously had enough. He emailed in a spat saying they'd turned away numerous inquiries, had no deposit, and could no longer hold back on taking other bookings. This time I did not bother replying. My part was done. My wife at the time and I were booked in at another restaurant close by for our own Valentine's meal. After which we took a walk past the restaurateur's business premises to see just 2 cars in their parking lot, one of which was his. I'm not sure how much he must have lost out on that night, but knowing his prices, I'd bet it was significantly more than the £400 I'd invoiced him. Of course, lessons were learned by me as well. Getting written or emailed confirmation of a job satisfaction for one, and not letting new clients go unbilled for too long was another. Naturally, I had no hesitation letting all and sundry know how he'd behaved either, so he was blacklisted or forced to pay upfront for any work by IT and other professionals I knew locally. Next story. Special delivery. It was the mid-90s. My father was a highly paid business consultant, and the company he worked for would hire him out to businesses who were trying to get off the ground. He would fly out, spend a few weeks with them, and train their management the finer points of business ownership. He also handled large projects, such as the planning, building, staffing, and the organization of new offices, and other such. For this, his company would charge anywhere from $300 to $400 an hour for his time, billed by the week at a minimum of 40 hours a week, or more if there was overtime. In exchange for this less than modest sum, the company took care of all of my father's expenses, rather than push them off on the client. This went on for years. My mom quit her job to stay at home with me, and my dad held down the finances of the household himself. But he was gone for 3 weeks at a time, and when he was here, he was at the office. I was lucky if I spent any real time with him more than 2 days a month. This also negatively affected my parents' marriage. Then for my 6th birthday, my dad got me a model plane and a membership card to the airline his company used. In truth, it was a copy of his card, but 6-year-old me thought it was the coolest thing ever. It had my dad's name on it and the word Admiral. Bringing his concerns regarding his home life to his boss, my father had struck a deal. I would be flown out to him every 3rd or so weekend. My father would pay the cost of the flights, but would use his company account and thus have access to his frequent flyer discount, company discount, and would collect any royalty points or whatever that I earned. I was flying for pennies on the dollar. I would spend the weekend with him in whatever hotel we were in, and we would go and do stuff in the city. He got to see me and I got to see both him and a new city. And Mom got to spend a weekend without me to decompress. Everyone loved the arrangement, myself especially. Fast forward a year and I have achieved Admiral status within the airline's loyalty program. Not a hard task as my dad already had that status and I was using his account. But I felt accomplished nonetheless, and had been to all 48 continental states. And this is when something happened. There was a change in the company. People moved around and people were hired and people were fired. And when all the dust settled, my dad found himself one position higher and under new management. Dad's new manager had no issues with the father and son getaway perk my dad was liberally using. But to offset the extra cost, there would be a few changes to my dad's expense account. While food and entertainment were fully covered, as many of his meetings happened over lunch, the manager decided that rather than provide my father with a rental car, instead he would take local transport, via cabs or similar services. and would be given a limited number of trips he could take a day. Surely he only needed to travel twice a day, to and from the site. So he was allotted 2 cab rides per day when he was out of state, including weekends since the manager wanted to be generous. Any additional travel my father wanted to take would be on his own dime. My dad brought up that the company was not spending any resources on my trips, aside from the 30 minutes of time it takes a travel agent to book my flights. But this new manager insisted that this was a much better use of company time and resources. All the other expenses, including the hotel, dry cleaning, and any mail that had to be sent, would be covered as usual. Now, normally my visiting weekends would be jam-packed with whatever local museum or attraction the city had, followed by a nice dinner at a cool or fancy restaurant. One does not achieve this with 2 cab rides a day. My dad blows all his cab rides on my next visit. We go and see everything: a museum, a movie, and a fair of some sort. Every trip was by cab. This is the part I remember, because my dad had me keep count with him. An entire amazing day was spent, and in total, 11 cab rides were had. Now for the malicious compliance. Without any more allotted cab rides, after I was sent home, my dad was still scheduled for a week of work. He contacted the local post office and explained his situation. After some evil laughter from both him and the postman, a truck showed up at his hotel. He mails himself to work and then back again for the rest of the week. He pays for first-class delivery by the pound, and this becomes exorbitantly expensive. At the end of the trip, my dad sent an expensive report that had a few $1,000s extra on it, and all for shipping costs. The fallout. There was a change in the company. Some people were moved and some people were hired, and some people were fired. My father found himself under a new manager. The company decided that it was improper to have different rules for expenses for different employees based on their status or tenure. A fixed policy was enacted company-wide. My dad's new manager had no issues with sending me out once a month on my father's business account, as long as my father paid for the cost of the flights. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.